Okay, everyone. Welcome to our Alaskan Healthy Homes class. In this class, we're going to delve into the essentials of maintaining a healthy home and some common hazards and how to spot and prevent them. With me here is Sophie Burchell of our Media and Outreach Fellow, and I'm Rosa Vogel, the project coordinator at the Cold Climate Housing Research Center. We are just going to have a quick poll. If you would fill out the questions quickly. Just takes a minute. It gives us really helpful information that helps us run these classes more smoothly and give you the topics that you want to see. If you wouldn't mind answering those questions, we'll give you a minute and then we'll start with the class. So while everyone is finishing up that poll, I just wanted to give a quick thank you to our sponsors, Golden Valley Electric Association and the Alaska Housing Finance Corporation. Thank you for sponsoring our fall class series. We'll have a question and answer section at the end of the presentation. If you have a question during the presentation, please feel free to put it in the chat. And then at the end, you can raise your hand or put questions in the chat. And presenting today is Professor Julie Cascio. She's joining us from Palmer. She is a professor at University of Alaska Fairbanks, and she specializes in food preservation, food safety, healthy eating, life skills, family economics, and healthy homes. She is based at Extension's Mat-Su/Copper Valley, River Valley District Office. So thank you so much for joining us, Julie.
Well, hello, everybody. I am so glad that you are here starting out with us this evening, this beautiful Alaska evening. Depending upon where you're located, you have snow and maybe be a little breezy. It is here in the Mat-Su Valley. That is true. So I'm going to move that pull out of the way. Let's start by, I'm going to ask, is your home safe? I want you to think about that. Is your home safe? The learning objectives for today's program are to recognize the connections between health, well-being, and the home environment, that environment in which we live. We want to identify the safety hazards in the home and the near environment. And we'll also list actions that can be taken to reduce safety hazards in the home. There are a lot of safety hazards, and we are going to be working on many as we go. There may be a few that we don't, and that's fine. At the end, if you have questions on those, bring them up, but you'll find that all the different things that we are talking about relate to all of those hazards in some respect or another. Environmental wellness of occupants. This is influenced by many types of exposures that may be unknowingly found in and around the house. So have you had your home tested for any of the exposures that are listed here? It might be moisture, mold, radon, asthma triggers, combustion gases, septic systems, drinking water, lead-based paint. Yes, we live in Alaska, and we'll talk about when that came into play, when it might not be an issue for you, it might still be an issue for you, but it still is valid here in Alaska as well. Carbon dioxide, household chemicals, asbestos containing materials, meth residue, mercury, pests, insects, even pets, bed bugs. Are there others that you can think of? If you think of something, feel free to stick it on in the chat, and if I can spot it, I will mention it. Well, it's not common to find all environmental exposures inside a home. Often one issue may be connected to another issue. As an example, using chemicals in the home without proper ventilation or using building products, things like paints or adhesives, particle board, all of those kinds of things, they can give off strong chemical odors, which will likely influence the quality of the air inside the house. A bathroom without exhaust ventilation, that could result in molds. And while many of these connections can be obvious to some of us, without a careful, strategic, and holistic assessment, issues affecting the occupant's health can be left undetected, or by fixing one problem, another issue can be created. So what is a healthy home? The United States Department of Housing and Urban Development, which we'll nickname HUD, states that a healthy home is one that is designed, constructed, maintained, or rehabilitated in a manner that prevents diseases and injuries that result from housing-related hazards. Why is the health of our homes important? Our home environment should be healthy because there are many things in our home environment that can cause that sickness or harm. And yes, carbon monoxide was mentioned, Elena. So the cover that you see here in this slide is of a resource called Everyone Deserves a Safe and Healthy Home. This was published by the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development and in combination with the U.S. Department of Agriculture, USDA. This is a useful, comprehensive resource. This publication covers key topics important to healthy housing, and it's available in several languages and also in Native American, Native Indian, Alaskan's version is available as well. This Everyone Deserves a Safe and Healthy Home is available on the partnership website. And if you look at the bottom, and I'm using my little arrow here, it shows where that is. And Rosa has put it into the chat as well. So if you're interested in finding it quickly, that's a great way to get access to it and download it if you choose. So there are 7 tips that really help us look at the house as a system. And these tips instruct us, and the ones that we're going to be going through in this next hour and 15 minutes, is to keep the house dry, keep it clean, keep it pest-free, keep it ventilated, keep it safe, keep it contaminant-free, and also well-maintained. There we go. There are many possible ways to be injured in a house. So take a look at this picture that you have on your slide. I know it's a little tiny, so hopefully you can see it okay. But note that there's lots of different numbers on there. There are actually 12 issues illustrated in this section of a house. And right now we're just looking at a house, overall house. We're not looking at all the details that could be challenges. But the ones that are shown here, if you can find number 1, safety gates. These gates are very helpful to prevent falls from happening downstairs, and also can help keep children away from dangerous areas. And frankly, it can help keep the pets out of places where you don't want them to damage things, but that's a little different issue. Number 2, safety hatches. And these are also locks for cabinets and drawers in the kitchen, in the bathrooms, and in other areas. They really help prevent poisonings and other injuries. If you can spot number 3, that is doorknob covers and also door locks. Again, they help prevent children from entering rooms and other areas where possible dangers can happen. Number 4. Use an anti-scald device for faucets and for shower heads, and set the water heater temperature to 120 degrees. Number 5, up here in this corner on the right, Place smoke detectors on every level of the home, near bedrooms to alert residents to fires. Number 6 are window guards and safety netting. They help prevent falls from windows, balconies, decks, and landings. And there's more in this particular ways where injuries can occur and ways to prevent them. And that's what we're going to go through in these next 60-some slides. So let's start with number 1. Keep it dry inside the home. This means preventing water from entering your home through many different systems. One is through leaks in the roofing systems, from rainwater entering the home because there's poor drainage inside the house, and also checking your interior plumbing for any leaking that can happen. The next 3 slides are going to show issues where too much moisture in the house can happen, which are really reasons to keep it dry. So this particular picture, if you can tell, notice that there's window condensation. And this condensation on the window can result in mold and wall damage. And the mold in this case is right here along the inside part of the window. This happens to us here in Alaska with our freezing temperatures outside and our warmth inside the house, even if we have curtains, which help us for different reasons. This second slide is a lack of use of bathroom exhaust vent or having a vent that does not work, and that can result in excessive moisture and excessive mold, which the top ceiling area and the outside lines of the wall are showing. If you have no gutter or downspouts, that can result in a crawl space where water is leaking in or dripping in because of that failure to have a gutter or a downspout. So keep in mind that moisture levels need to be monitored. Too much moisture can cause damage to a home, and they can affect health. Molds and viruses multiply with too much moisture in the home. Now, some of you are in Fairbanks, and you're probably just shaking your head at me because it's quite dry in Fairbanks pretty much all year round. But that's not the only place we have in Alaska. And in other areas, there can be a lot more moisture depending upon where you're located. Maybe if you're in the Valdez, Homer, southeast area, or on another island, living on another island or near the ocean, you can have a lot more moisture in your area. At low relative humidity, incidences of respiratory infections and allergic rhinitis can happen, and they can increase. Other concerns of low humidity are static electricity, damage to furniture and musical instruments, and often very dry skin. So you want to make sure that you're watching what is a good way to do it. And note that that optimal zone, which is the blue spot in the middle where I have the arrow showing, is around 50. It's between about 40 to 45 to about close to 60, 58, somewhere in that area. That's an optimal zone of moisture in your home. So mold, this is the factor that is a hazard in areas where moisture is too much. What mold is a type of fungus. It grows on damp surfaces. It grows by releasing spores into that damp area, and it grows on organic materials. Those are things like wood, drywall, wallpaper, carpet, and even foods that are damp and left out. There is, and I don't have it registered here, I think at the end I do, but the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, they have a publication that's a brief guide to mold, moisture, and your home. And you can get that online at www.epa.gov/mold. And that brief guide is available there. It's a nice one to have access to and look into. We also want to remove moisture. So relative humidity is the amount of moisture in the air relative to the amount that that air can hold. So cold air, that can hold very little moisture. So even at 90% relative humidity in a very cold area, there is little moisture in the air. As the air is warmed, then the amount of moisture it can hold increases and the relative humidity decreases. So as the air, air at 0 degrees Fahrenheit and 90 degrees relative humidity will have a relative humidity of only 5% when it's warmed to 70 degrees Fahrenheit, because there's not much moisture to begin with. Since the outside air is very dry during the winter, ventilating is the best way to remove moisture. Summer ventilation, that may increase the humidity in a basement. So cooling air increases its relative humidity. Air at 75 degrees Fahrenheit with a 65% relative humidity will have that relative humidity value of about 90% if it's cooled to 65 degrees Fahrenheit in a cool basement. So then a dehumidifier or an air conditioner is recommended to reduce basement humidity during the summer. Yes, I know some areas in Alaska doesn't, especially this summer, did not get very warm at all. In our area, we maybe had 2 handfuls of summer, but that is not the case in all of Alaska. So it's important information to know and understand. Even with energy efficient windows, relative humidity in the home or in one room can cause condensation on the windows. Prolonged moisture from condensation can damage the window by rotting the wood around the window, and that of course can lead to mold growth. So you want to reduce that condensation by keeping the indoor humidity level below 40% during the winter. You can reduce that window condensation by adding an additional layer. Sometimes that's a plastic, because that can warm the window surface. And it's pretty similar to when we are going outside in the winter, we dress in layers. That is that layering aspect that helps us when we go outside. But that layering aspect can help with the condensation reduction in our windows during the winter. And again, dehumidifiers, they generally only lower the humidity to about 50%. So dehumidifiers are not quite adequate enough for limiting that condensation during the winter. Poor or inadequate attic ventilation can also lead to problems such as wet insulation, your insulation getting wet, or water damaged ceilings. It can lead to rotting wood. It can also lead to mold growth. So it's important to provide attic ventilation at the eave. That's where the arrow is found, and also at the peak or the ridge. Very important spots to have good ventilation. Another factor that can occur is ice dams. Ice dams occur when escaping heat melts the snow on the roof, and the water freezes when it reaches the eaves of the house. So reduce that potential for ice dams by providing adequate attic insulation and ventilation. So you need both insulation and ventilation, and reduce any air paths from the living space to the attic. Crawl spaces and basements can be sources of moisture in a home. Moisture can move through the soil or the porous concrete and into the house. Crawl spaces, which are usually underneath the house, should have a vapor retarder on the soil that is sealed to the foundation. Otherwise, the moisture that's in the crawl space can lead to mold growth as well. And you can see how on the outside edge of that wall, how that ground cover is going up and over that rim and then up against the wall. And the rim is usually a concrete border that it's stable, the house outside part is stabilized on. Another factor that's important is controlling moisture by drainage. Install at least 6 inches of gravel underneath that basement concrete floor. That provides a water drainage layer and also a radon removal layer. And we'll talk more about radon later on. Also, you need to provide gradual ground slope, and that has to go away from the home. That's outside of the house, that ground slope away from the home, and extend downspouts away from the house as well. If you have those close to your driveway or where you're going to be shoveling snow, you have to watch for that downspout, because sometimes it can be in the way or underneath the snow and you don't notice it, and it can be broken. So be aware of where that downspout is and make sure that it's extended away from the house and not damaged or broken. So mold can be a problem caused by that excess moisture. So we want to correct that moisture problem first. So action steps in this involve maintaining low indoor humidity between 40–50% humidity. Note that warm air holds more water than cold air does. Fixing any of those leaky plumbing things that you might have. Empty and clean the refrigerator drip pans, and do that on a regular basis. Hard to remember because it's not something you see very often. Put it on your list of things to do. In your bathroom, run a fan when you're bathing and make sure that fan works. We had to get ours replaced last year because we were having difficulties with it. Exhaust the dryer that you have for your laundry dryer to the outdoors. Do control moisture in the crawl space under the house, which we talked about a couple of slides back. And if you are in the basement and you have carpet, it's recommended to replace it with a hard surface floors, because remember that basement can retain a lot of moisture, too much. Use an air conditioner to lower humidity if that is needed in your home. And if you see it or smell it, then you know that you have mold. So clean up small areas where you see mold or you can smell it with a small amount of bleach solution. And that's 1 part bleach to 10 parts water. And actually, you don't have to use bleach. Soap and water, and in fact, some of the newer recommendations through HUD and recommend that keep in mind bleach can be an irritant. So scrub well with the soap and water solution, and that will work. And then make sure that that area is dry. If you need a dehydrator or a dryer to dry that area, go for it. But make sure that it's well dry after you wash it with that soap and water solution. And do all this cleaning when children are not present. Keep in mind, since soil and leaves contain mold, limit the house plants that are in your home, particularly limit them in the bedrooms, because when you're sleeping, you tend to be there for a long period of time, and that's when that irritation can happen. So the next step is keep it clean. This means control the source of dust and contaminants that are in the home, create smooth, cleanable surfaces, reduce any clutter, and use effective wet cleaning methods that you can dry well afterwards. During this section, we're going to talk about, in the keeping it clean area, goes along with keeping it dry as well, is asthma. So what is asthma? This is a chronic inflammatory disorder of the airways. It's a chronic disease, and chronic means that it's long-term or has many episodes. Asthma is not the same as allergies, but allergies may cause asthma. Keep in mind, asthma is not contagious. It is treatable, but it is not curable at this point, at this time. However, asthma can be controlled through a combination of proper asthma medications and controlling things that trigger asthma. And keep in mind that asthma can also be life-threatening. So things that contribute to asthma are things that happen in the home. Some is dust that falls to the floor. It could be bugs. It could be smoke particles on the furniture, on clothing. It could be pet dander that has collected on the floor. And there are a lot of other things that can happen. So keep in mind that asthma can be controlled in 2 ways. The first listed here is medication. And there are excellent medicines available now that can control asthma. Some have to be taken on a daily basis, some at other time periods. Work with your medical practitioner, your doctor for that. Make sure that you have the correct medication for your asthma, or your child or friend, whomever has it. And the other section that can control asthma is reducing those environmental triggers. Environmental triggers of asthma can control to reduce those asthma symptoms. And keep in mind, those asthma symptoms are different for everyone. Common asthma allergy triggers in the home environment, we mentioned some, and we're going to go into more details on them, are things like secondhand smoke, dust mites, mold, pets, and pests. And we have talked about mold already and the importance of taking care of that. Remember that first step, keep things dry in your home. So avoiding secondhand smoke action. Steps in that: do not allow smoking indoors or in vehicles, because that can linger there and become a trigger. Limit use of fireplaces and candles. Use exhaust fan over gas stoves. That exhaust is very important because it pulls it out and pushes it away. And if it's something that's just a fan that pushes it everywhere, then it means it will bother the person who has asthma already, or others who don't and may develop it because of an issue with that dust that is coming from the gas. Also, smoke particles, they can stick to clothing, and that can affect young children when the young child is held in the arms of the person who has those smoke particles on their clothing. Pets. Pets can be a challenge. It's the skin flakes, the urine, the saliva of warm-blooded animals. Those can be asthma triggers. And the triggers can remain inside the home for several months after an animal is removed, even if it has been cleaned. And we're only showing a couple of types of pets, dogs and cats here, but there are others that can have those challenge triggers as well. So some action steps to prevent those triggers from pets is try to keep the pets outdoors, if that's possible. Everybody is different in how they want their pets to be around. But do keep your pets off beds and out of bedrooms. Keep the pets off of the fabric-covered furniture. I could tell you a story on my daughter who has her, well, I have a cat too, so it's me too. But in her home, she has this wonderful rocking chair that is covered with fabric, and her cats like to sit on it, and her cats have long hair. Actually, her cats, well, one of them is a long-haired cat, one of them is a short-haired cat, but the fur from those cats stick to that particular chair, and it's really hard to get it off. So we have one of her relatives on the other side of the family has pet allergies, and so it's really hard for her to, unfortunately, to come and visit because of that. So keep those pets off fabric covered furniture. Have the special furniture just for the cats or the pets, whatever pets you have, that they can sit on. Another is to use a HEPA vacuum to vacuum up the pet fur. It does help. Keep litter boxes, pet beds, cages. Those are great, but keep them away from sleeping areas. And if the pets get on the people bed, then wash the bedding in hot water to take as much of those triggers off of the bedding as possible. Remember, pets are loved members of our families. But if someone is sensitive to pet dander, try at least to keep those pets off of beds and outside of the bedroom. If you live in apartments or urban environments, particularly in multifamily housing, or you have other situations, you may not have the option in those settings of keeping your pet outdoors. And the pets sometimes need to be outdoors just so they can run around and get some exercise in, but they might have to stay in the home. And so that's fine, but keep in mind, we need to make some areas of the home free of that pet dander to reduce those triggers. Other indoor triggers for asthma, allergies, or health hazards are household products. So the vapors that come from cleaning solvents, like a non-water-based cleaner, from paint, from liquid bleach, mothballs, glue, those vapors can be problematic. So keep those away keep them in a safe spot that can be boarded off or shut into a door, or don't keep them in your home because of the vapors that can evolve from them. Spray deodorants and perfume, those are also possible health hazards for allergies or other health issues. And we mentioned bleach already, but pesticides, oven cleaners, drain openers, and aerosol spray products, like things you might want to do to make your hair look great, those may be things that can be triggers as well. Something that you might want to do then is try green cleaners. Use low toxic and fragrance-free cleaners. Make your own if you like to do that. Keep in mind a mixture of hot water with some vinegar is a good all-purpose cleaner. Just hot water and vinegar. And when I say that, I mean a clear vinegar. If you use a apple cider vinegar, that's fine. It works well. But remember, it has a little bit of a color to it. So if you're cleaning something that's painted white, it might be a different color over time. Just a hint in that one. Vinegar works well though. So we've talked about keeping it dry, keeping it clean, and now we'll look into keep it safe. Think about it. What harmful products do you have in your home? Some products can harm your family's health if you do not use them in the right way. So common chemicals, we've mentioned bleach already, but other things like rat poison, paint strippers, drain cleaners, all of those things can be dangerous. And children even can poison themselves if they get into those kinds of products. So even very small amounts of some chemicals can cause health problems if you touch them or even if you breathe them. Remember, if you spray or pump something, it goes right into the air. When you and your family breathe, then those chemicals go into your bodies. So if you have poisons, store them out of reach of the children. Properly label them. Those labels are very important so that you know what they are, so you remember what they are. We'll talk about a reason for that a little bit later. If you have any loose rugs, secure them. And that's important for somebody who's running around, maybe a child running around where it slips and then they fall. And it could be for somebody who's just walking through the house and because it's loose and not firmly attached to the floor, then again, a fall can happen. Another problem is even very small amounts, we've talked about that, pumping or breathing, etc. What was that? Oh, so if you touch something or you breathe them in, remember, if you spray, it goes right into the air. If your family breathes, then those chemicals go into your bodies when you're doing that breathing. Store your poisons out of reach of children. We talked about that. Okay. Oh, that's where we were. Install the smoke and carbon monoxide detectors and keep your fire extinguishers on hand. If you have household chemicals, make sure that you use them for cleaning. If you don't use them, get rid of them. If you have pesticides used for killing pests around the home, not the best thing to keep. They have to be kept out of reach and contained very well. And for most things, you want a professional IPM pesticide manager to take care and utilize those products. Do not keep them in the kitchen near food either, or food storage. Automotive products, cosmetics, personal hygiene products, Air fresheners and medications are also things that can be hazardous if they're not kept in a safe area and out of reach of those who should not be touching them, like children or people that should not be taking those medications, for example. So keep in mind, there are risks, and risks involve toxic or poisonous products because they can cause injury or death through ingestion, that means eating them, inhalation, breathing them in, or absorption through the skin. Corrosive materials, that's another risk. Those things can burn the skin and burn the eyes. Another risk factor is flammable or combustible, and that means things can be set on fire. If it's explosive or reactive, that means that the item can explode if it's exposed to heat or pressure. So these 4 risks are involved in different ways. It's important to use products in the home safely. To do this, read the label first. Note there may be signal words such as caution, warning, danger, poison. They might be on the label. And you'll know if you see any of those 4 words or 4 phrases that there can be a challenge. If you want to find out more about the product, look up the safety data sheets. In the past, they were called material safety data sheets, but safety data sheets. And again, if you want more information on this, you see the publication here at the bottom. OSHA.gov publications has Quick Card safety data, and that's where you can find more information on that. Other actions for safety and safe use of products include: do not mix hazardous products together. Ammonia and bleach, no. Keep them separate, keep them apart, never put those 2 together. Use any of these products in well-ventilated areas. That means that it can escape out if needed. Always protect your eyes, your nose, and your skin when you're using any of these products. Consider pump sprays instead of aerosol sprays. They're helpful. And don't use bug bombs or foggers. Those are also can take that into people's breathing system. It affects that indoor air quality in a negative manner. Other steps: never leave the product where children can see it or reach it. Don't eat or drink when you're using hazardous products. Always put the cap back on after using the product, and buy products in child-resistant containers. And know the poison help number, 1-800-222-1222. Have that in mind. When you're in a panic, even if you have it memorized, you may not remember it. So having it somewhere near your phone or inside your phone, if you have a cell phone that you always use, that's easy to access and find, keep it there so that if an emergency happens, you can get help immediately. Other suggestions are use less. Buy less toxic products. And another option is to make your own green cleaners. Check out EPA because they have some good internet access to green cleaning products that you might want to try and use on your own. And again, we've already mentioned vinegar and water. And do store your products safely. Always keep those products in their original containers and away from children. Keep your pesticides and other hazardous products at least 150 feet away from wells, that's water wells, and from water sources. Keep your flammable products away from direct sunlight and from heat sources as well. And again, we mentioned keeping your products away from children, keep any medicines out of sight, out of reach. Even remember purses. Sometimes a child can get into a purse and grab what's there. And if they're there and they can open it, that's not a good sign. Also ask for child-resistant medicine containers because that makes it harder for a child to open it. Sometimes for us adults too, when we have hand issues, but definitely for the children, to keep them out of it. And there are some examples of things that are a challenge. You have dangerous look-alike products. So for example, you see these green, orange, yellow, and red things over on the side. They might be a candy, or they could be an adult vitamin pill that looks like candy, or it could be a medicine pill that looks like a candy or a sugary candy, like the one up in the top right-hand corner. So that's not safe because things that you shouldn't take, you know, and eat as much as you want at once. Well, you shouldn't do that for sugar, but that's a whole nother class. And make sure that those medicine pills, vitamin pills are away, they're sealed in a good area, and that they are labeled well so that you know what you are grabbing. Another challenge is when you have things that are cleaners, but they look like sugar drinks. So the one to the left that I have the arrow against looks like a glass with a sugar drink in it or a tea, but it's not. It's actually a cleaner, and that's not safe. So you have to keep that in mind as well. This chocolate thing down at the bottom, you might think, oh, chocolate candy. It's another holiday with more chocolate candy. And fine, I'm in the mood for it. I can have some. But it might not be. It could actually be a medication or something that is being used for a person who's having issues, and so it has medication inside of it. So keep in mind, this is a summary to reduce or minimize risks. Use items safely. Use less items that are not safe. So pesticides, for example, don't keep those in the home. Use them less often. Find other ways that you can take care of getting rid of pests or keeping them out. Store your products safely away from food if they are chemically or medicinally related and should not be eaten by anybody. And follow through with safe disposal of medicines like pesticides and chemical cleaning products. So again, you can go for more information on this to www.epa.gov/IAQ. So Environmental Protection Agency. Number 4, keep the home well ventilated. That means things like ventilate bathrooms and kitchens, and you should have whole house ventilation. All of those are important for having a fresh air supply and also to reduce the concentration of contaminants inside the home. So for healthy homes, a 3-step process may help when you're attempting to discover if there's a problem. The process is also applicable when you're looking at carbon monoxide and other combustion gas issues. So identify the problem and or test for potential problems. Remove mitigation or mitigate the source of the problems, and increase the ventilation of the home. Let's look at more. So combustion gases or combustion byproducts. These are from the burning of fuels. And those fuels could be natural gas, propane, wood, oil, kerosene, and coal that are in the house. And these gases typically include carbon monoxide, nitrogen dioxide, di means 2, mono means 1, nitrogen dioxide, sulfur dioxide, and particulates like soot and smoke. And we talked about smoke and its challenge a little earlier. Most of these combustion gases are invisible. We cannot see them, we cannot smell them. Carbon monoxide is especially dangerous in that families are often exposed to very harmful and sometimes lethal levels without even knowing about it. So carbon monoxide reduces the blood's ability to carry oxygen, and it causes exposure to smaller quantities of carbon monoxide, which causes a person to lie down thinking they have the flu. They lie down, and the person falls asleep, and then it can become fatal. So warning signs of carbon monoxide exposure are headaches, dizziness, disorientation, a blurry vision, weakness, maybe nausea, fatigue, vomiting, chest pains, or sleepiness. And because it cannot be seen or smelled, it's called a silent killer. So a breakdown of exposure levels and possible outcomes is very important in that surrounding air. The most common sources and locations of carbon monoxide and other combustion gases in the homes are gas appliances like ovens, ranges and stoves like cooktops, and dryers. Also furnaces, boilers, water heaters, fireplaces, wood-burning stoves, garages, and that's from the car exhaust, space heaters. Note that all appliances will be a concern for carbon monoxide or other combustion gas, as many of these might be electric and not gas, or have combustibles like oil or wood inside them. Also space heaters, grills, meat smokers, lawnmowers, snow blowers. Anybody use those today? I did. Gas-powered generators, and even cigarette smoke. So note that those are sources, and we need to be careful and keep them in a well-ventilated area. So this on the side is a carbon monoxide alarm, and it's very important to have them. There are various types of carbon monoxide detectors. I'm just showing a picture of them. Nothing that I would say is one above the other, but know that they are they have different percentages that they're going to put off an alarm from. If it's only a 30 part per million present, then the alarm will sound, if it's that way, for about 30 days. If it's up to 400 parts per million, that alarm sound will happen within 4 to 15 minutes of it occurring. Immediately leave the building if that's the case. And this comes from the Underwriters Laboratories, Standards for Carbon Monoxide Alarms. So sources of these possible problems are combustion gas and water heaters. Note on this one that the flue above an old natural gas water heater produced dangerous levels of carbon monoxide. And that can happen if the water heater is not working properly, if the flue is disconnected, or the flue is blocked. You might have a worn or poorly adjusted and maintained combustion device, like a furnace, and that can be a significant source. So we want to be careful. You can see, if you look really carefully, what the problems are, where there's blockage or it's showing. For example, when the flues are mostly horizontal, which you're seeing, there's much more prone to separation, blockage, or other leakage of those combustion gases. Also combustion gas and cooktops. And these are in kitchens. And the picture on the left, note that there is no ventilation, which can draw it out. So that's a hazard. And the picture on the right shows the gas oven and the range with a range hood, which properly ventilates that carbon monoxide and the cooking smells in and around the appliance. So range hoods above the gas ranges need to ventilate directly to an outside wall or above the roof, which it does not show that this is happening. Sometimes it does, and it's just behind that cabinet door. So you have to check it and make sure. Keep in mind, it should never ventilate to another area of the house, like inside to the garage, the attic, or the crawl space. It has to ventilate outside and not be a recirculating type. So now we're going to go in to keep it pest-free. All pests look for food, water, and shelter. So seal those cracks and openings throughout the home. Store the food in pest-resistant containers. And if needed, use sticky traps and baits in closed containers, along with least toxic pesticides. Boric acid powder is a source of that. It's a less chemical one. So to prevent pests, get rid of places for pests to hide. And that means get rid of sources of food and water. Pests are like us. They like food, water, and shelter. So do not leave food out or garbage out because that can collect pests. Clean up any food spills and crumbs right away, and clean up the kitchen. And caulk any cracks and crevices you might have in the home. And pest-proof your living space. First approach to that is do not store any paper grocery sacks or cardboard boxes around the house, because if you have cockroaches in your area, and even though in the past they have not been predominant in Alaska, they get brought into Alaska from people moving up here from other states, or from shipments that are brought in for stores or grocery stores that the cockroaches come along with. So keep in mind, the cockroaches like the glue in those grocery sacks or cardboard boxes, so keep them away. And plus, those from grocery stores might have food pest particles in them, which will attract those pests as well. So, and mainly keep rid of clutter. Clean up clutter. That gets rid of dusts, and it gets rid of pests as well. And moisture can affect that indoor air quality by increasing the dust mite populations. Remember, way back in the beginning, we talked about keep things dry. Another reason is dust mites. And these are those tiny creatures that feed on human skin cells that are shed every day. Some people are allergic to dust mites, will have symptoms like a runny nose or watery eyes. Dust mites prefer moist environments and soft textures. That includes bedding, upholstery fabrics, and carpets. And mites do not normally live in the dry environment of a furnace or an air conditioning duct because they like some moisture. So action steps to counter dust mite is cover those mattresses and pillows in dust-proof zippered covers. That's allergen impermeable. Vacuum mattress, chairs, and carpeting, as we saw in that last picture. Replace your pillows every 5 years. Limit stuffed animals in your bedrooms. And we're talking stuffed animals because the stuffed animals can keep dust mites on them, in them. And freeze items that can't be washed to kill any dust mites. Freezing, like hot temperatures, also kills those dust mites. And it might be an option for those small stuffed animals that you really love that are not easily washed. And then keep your home contaminant free. So we're going to talk about lead and radon. Radon, this is a colorless, odorless, radioactive gas, and it forms naturally from the radioactive decay of uranium, which is found at various levels in the bedrock of our ground. Radon gas escapes upward through the soil from the bedrock below into the air. It goes into the groundwater, and it also goes into the surface water. Since it forms naturally from the decay of uranium, it dissipates outside. So if it's found in a low level in outdoor air. So that's helpful, right? But it can cause the greatest danger inside the home. And that's because it can be trapped in your house. And that means it can, in the home, become a danger to the family. So radon enters the house through imperfections in the floors and the walls where there is contact between the home and the soil. The zone you are in indicates potential hazards. So zone 1, highest potential, and that's the red. Orange, moderate, and yellow is the least. So Alaska is this very small dot to the left of the United States picture. Oh, this went sideways, shucks. I don't know if I can spin it. Oh, you'll have to twist your head, unfortunately, to see that. I'll fix it afterwards. But notice most of Alaska is yellow, so that's zone 1, it's a low amount, but a lot of it is pretty moderate, and that includes the Fairbanks area, the Matsu Valley, and all these areas that are in the orange color are a moderate amount. And radon, keep in mind, it will be anywhere there is a decaying uranium with an escape route into the atmosphere. Since it's colorless and odorless, the only way to know if you have a problem is to test your house. And the radon levels fluctuate from day to day. So longer the test, the more accurate it is. You have the short-term charcoal version, the one on the right, and that means that it takes 3 to 7 days for the test. It's advised that you follow up with a second short-term test after that. The one in the middle is a long-term, and your options for that are an alpha track 3 months to a year test. So you set it in the proper location in a room where the most time is spent. Often that's a bedroom. It might be in a living room area, might be where your computer is, if that's where you spend most time. And that's an option. The other is a continuous plug-in. And a friend of mine has found too much radon in their home. And so they have a continuous plug of a radon test in their home so that they can monitor and make sure that the radon is not building up. What you're looking for is the amount of picocuries per liter. And even if you've done some testing, it's no problem. Test every 7 to 10 years. As long as there's no ground interruption. If there's an extreme drought or flooding or a seismic action like an earthquake, then it should be tested after that, because that can cause a break in the bedrock, which can allow that uranium to lead up into your area, particularly into your home, especially if there's cracks in your basement or walls. So seal those cracks. To prevent this, we want to seal cracks in the cement slab of the home and the basement walls. Mitigate or change the air pressure, and mitigate by evacuating the radon from underneath that basement slab. And lead is another one. We'll talk about that a little bit later. So number 7, keep your home well maintained. That means inspect, clean, and repair your home routinely. Take care of minor repairs and problems before they become large repairs and larger problems. So a lot of those things we've talked about earlier. Look for flames in appliances, the furnace, the water heater, the ovens, the ranges that are mostly yellow and not blue. That's a sign that that needs to be checked. Look for cracks, gaps, holes, missing pieces in the walls, in the floors, in the flues, in the chimneys, and in the vents. Check your flues, check your chimneys, check your vents. Make sure they're connected and ventilated to the outside of the house. Check your dampers for fireplaces and wood stoves and make sure they're working and they open correctly. Again, remember we talked about dryness. Check for humidity or condensation in the air or on the windows. Look for rust or water streaking on chimneys and flues. Clean your fireplace and wood stove and your chimneys and flues regularly. Oh, I should have put in a picture of my husband doing that, because he does check our chimneys every month. And check for loose panels on the same items. Verify monthly that the carbon monoxide detectors, those alarms, are working and free of dust. And check your generators are safe distances away from windows and doors to the house, and that you have a good place to put them. A windstorm that we had last winter, your power went out, but we couldn't use our generator because it needed to be stored outside the home, and we didn't have a good secure location that protected it from the wind with an exposure area, so there was good ventilation. Keep in mind that most problems, and so now we'll talk about lead, with lead come from old paint and stains in homes that were built before 1978. So examples of that, lower left-hand corner, are lead paint. And sometimes with the lead paint, if you look up to the left, the lead paint might chip off. And if it chips off and a child is around exploring or touching things, and sometimes taste, that sense is something that children use. Sometimes we adults use it. And we put that in our mouth because of our hands that it touched it, or that it had come down onto us and we put it up to our mouth, or we touch food and brought it to our mouth, that means that we've brought that lead into our system. Notice the picture on the upper right corner where you have some lead paint that's on an old piece of wood that a child is playing with. It could be an adult too. That can cause a problem, or the one below it where you have windows that had asbestos on them. It could also be in the flooring of a system. Those who are at most risk from lead are most vulnerable are babies, young children, women who are pregnant and developing the babies, but seriously, lead can harm everyone. And here's an example of, we have to be careful on the roof system if it breaks apart, or the floor system. I don't know if any of these are showing it. Walls that are broken, they could have lead issues inside them or with them or from the paint that's on them, and that can cause problems. So be careful if you are dealing with this. We'll talk about asbestos next, and that also is a problem. It was used in building components, including insulation, roofing, and tiles, and it can become airborne when it is disturbed. So exposure to asbestos may increase the risk of lung disease. Unless it's labeled, the only way to tell if building components contain asbestos is by testing it. If you're in doubt, treat that area as if it were asbestos. If the material is in good shape and inaccessible, you can leave it alone. That's fine. But if it's damaged, or you are remodeling and it will be disturbed, then consider having it tested. So for more information, visit EPA asbestos webpage. Naturally occurring fibrous minerals is what asbestos is. And there are over 3,000 different products that were made using asbestos fibers. And there are even some new products still made using it. The bad thing is that these fibers can be inhaled and ingested and cause illnesses. It could be pleural plaques, asbestosis, mesothelioma, lung cancer, and gastrointestinal illness. And 10 to 40 year latency period comes between the exposure to asbestos and the illness itself. Is it in your home? There are many areas in the home where asbestos can be located. And you can see that just from those little dots of color that are all around the picture of this house, on the outside of it and on the inside. Keep in mind, it is a cancer and lung disease hazard. So to remove it, it should be done by an authorized personnel, and respirators and protective clothing is required when in the area of asbestos. Sometimes we have other things that can happen and cause challenges. For example, maybe you have your light systems, your fluorescent light bulbs, your CFLs. They might fall apart and break. And keep in mind, they contain small amounts of mercury. So take precautions when you're cleaning up after a breakage, and clean them carefully and safely. Don't touch them with your hands. Use a shovel and something to brush it into, or a shovel container to brush it into, and then go put it away and put it into the garbage bin where it is not going to break apart and break out. So there are many action steps that you can take to improve your home. Carefully and plan and consider the moisture, the carbon monoxide, the radon, the lead, the asbestos, and all kinds of other potential hazards like fires and falls and children getting into chemicals. So many things can happen. And there are many resources that we can go to find more information if you need it for asthma and allergies. HUD, EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, the American Lung Association. You can always go to US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, that's cdc.gov. And fire and water cleanup and restoration service companies, another thing to look for. EPA.gov for mold. And look for pest control companies if you think you're having a problem with pests that are going to need some pest control, and go for an integrated pest management system for that. And for secondhand smoke, if you need more help on that, smokefree.gov is a good resource. Other resources, carbon monoxide, again, EPA is a great resource. Consumer Product Safety Commission, CPSC, has good information on carbon monoxide. We talked EPA already, and American Lung Association and HUD. All of these are good sources for carbon monoxide and combustion gases and ways to prevent them. And keep in mind that HUD has a great list of steps, and it's 3 or 4 pages long. Can't remember, haven't looked at it for a little bit, but it is a very important step to go into and figure out what to do. So if anybody has any questions or comments, please feel free to call me or email me. If you have any questions, we'll stick around and do that.
Oh, sorry. Thank you so much, Julie. Does anyone have any questions? You can feel free to put them in the chat or raise your hand and we can call on you. Jean, go ahead.
Okay, good presentation. Thank you. My question is about with energy efficiency, a lot of people have done a lot of work to seal up their homes, and then so talk to us about the juxtaposition of energy efficiency versus ventilation, because what we did was we sealed up our homes to make sure that they didn't leak.
That's a very good point. Yes, you need to seal up your home so they don't leak, and it's good for the home. It helps you keep your heat inside. It helps a little bit with condensation in some respects, but that ventilation is what's so important. So even when you have a really strong, well-contained home, you have to have good ventilation to make sure it happens. I mentioned, and we had to change the ventilation in one of our bathrooms because our vents that had been okay in the past, we had to change again to make sure that that ventilation was continuing. And with the, I don't know what area of Alaska you're in, Jean, but the power outages can have a problem. They can cause challenges. Some of the other things I mentioned, where we can have ice dams or other things that can cause problems with our vent systems. Even high windstorms can cause issues. So getting those vents correct and making sure that they are is important.
Thank you.
Yeah, that wasn't maybe much help, but yeah, it is important. Thank you for bringing that up, Jean.
Great. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Are there any last questions? If not, we will go ahead and put up our exit poll. If you could please just answer those questions quickly before you head out. I would also just like to thank one more time our sponsors, GVEA and AHFC, for sponsoring our fall class series. And of course, thank you so much, Julie, for presenting. This was a really great presentation, really, really informative. So thank you so much for that. And this is the final class in our fall class series. If you enjoyed this class, look out for our spring class series coming up, and let us know what topics you want to hear about in that class series. So thank you so much, everyone, for attending, and thank you, Julie, for presenting.